Winchester Mansion is more than a historical relic in San Jose, California. It's a maze of mystery and paranormal activity. Built under the direction of Sarah Winchester, heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune, the mansion arose from her belief that she had to build endlessly to evade the curse of souls lost to her family's weapons. With hallways that seem to lead nowhere, doors that open to solid walls, and staircases that lead only to ceilings, every corner of the mansion appears designed to confuse both the living and the dead. Today, visitors to this captivating construction report eerie visions, strange sounds, and an overwhelming sense of being surrounded by something beyond the physical realm.
I'd heard a lot about the Winchester Mansion in San Jose, California, but I always thought the ghost stories were exaggerated to lure in tourists. However, after my experience there, I'll never doubt them again. I went to the mansion with a group of friends during a special Halloween event. They offered us a night tour, and I couldn't resist. The mansion itself was bizarre, filled with staircases that led nowhere, doors that opened to walls, and hallways that seemed endless. They told us it was all designed by Sarah Winchester, the widow of a rifle magnate, who had built the house out of fear that the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles were haunting her. The story was chilling enough, but the atmosphere inside the mansion was even worse. The air was frigid, and even though we were in a group, the silence in certain places felt so heavy it seemed like the mansion had a life of its own. We were allowed to wander through certain areas and explore with flashlights, but there were zones sealed off, with doors we were warned not to touch. Of course, in such a dark, legendary place, the warning only made us more curious. At one point, I drifted from the group while examining a wall covered in old photographs. They were black and white, each face staring back, empty and hollow. Then I felt it, an odd sensation, like someone was standing just behind me. I turned, but no one was there, only the bone-chilling cold. Suddenly, I heard a whisper. It was low, muffled, almost unintelligible at first. I assumed it was one of my friends playing a prank, but when I looked toward the sound, I saw that it came from a narrow hallway leading to a small, slightly open door. A faint light glowed from within, and though every instinct told me not to go closer, my feet moved on their own. As I drew near, the whisper became clearer, almost as if someone were calling my name. It wasn't a voice I recognized, but it felt oddly familiar. I reached the threshold and gently pushed the door open. The room was empty, except for a single chair in the center and an old mirror on the opposite wall. I froze when I looked at my reflection. There was a figure standing behind me, a shadowy form with features that seemed to blur, caught somewhere between the living and the dead. I spun around, but no one was there. My heart raced. When I looked back into the mirror, the shadow had crept closer, and I could now see a bony hand reaching out with long skeletal fingers stretching toward me. Panic washed over me, and before I knew it, I was sprinting out the door. As I ran, I heard soft, mocking laughter echoing behind me, as if the shadow was enjoying my fear. In my rush, I took a wrong turn, and before long, I found myself lost in a part of the mansion I didn't recognize. The house seemed to twist and shift, with every room looking eerily the same yet hauntingly different. Eventually, I found my way back to the group, my pulse pounding. My friends noticed my pale face and shaky breaths, but I could barely bring myself to explain what I'd seen. It felt like, by describing it, I'd only give it more power over me. As we left the mansion that night, I looked back at the windows one last time. In the dim light of one, I saw that shadow, watching me intently, as though it was waiting for me to return. I never set foot in the Winchester Mansion again, and every time someone asks about what happened that night, chills creep over me. Something tells me that shadow still remembers me.
A couple of years ago, my best friend and I decided to do something different for Halloween. A visit to the Winchester Mansion. The atmosphere was eerie from the moment we walked in, with heavy air and a strange silence broken only by the echo of our steps on the old wooden floors. Our group was small, and the guide told us that some night guards had quit after hearing inexplicable noises. As we moved along, we came to a narrow hallway with several closed doors and a staircase leading up into the darkness. When the group turned into another room, my friend and I decided to explore a bit more on our own. We found ourselves at the end of a dead-end hallway when we suddenly heard footsteps behind us, approaching slowly. I looked at my friend, wide-eyed. There was no one behind us. The footsteps sounded like heavy boots, getting closer and closer. We froze, terrified. Just as the footsteps seemed to be only a few feet away, they stopped. A cold chill swept down the hallway, and we felt a presence, as if someone was watching us, waiting. We decided to rejoin the group, but just as we were about to turn the corner, we heard the creak of a door opening behind us. We quickly turned around and saw one of the doors slowly swinging open, revealing a dark room that wasn't part of the tour. The guide saw us and asked if we were okay. Trying not to look frightened, we asked him about the door that had opened. His face turned pale, and he quietly told us that the room was permanently locked because maintenance workers often heard laughter and footsteps from inside, though they never found anyone there. That night, after returning home, I felt as if something had followed me. And even now, sometimes when I'm alone in my room, I can hear those heavy footsteps approaching slowly, as if something from the Winchester Mansion decided to come with me.